Hi everyone. So I am Thomas Brunet. I'm a composer for video games, and thanks Joseph for having me. I will start with saying a few things about this talk. So I've had kind of a pompous title, like these things often go. The soundtrack of storytelling puzzles. Um, Let me just tell you, I don't have the absolute truth about how to do this. Like, there's a million ways of doing puzzle games, and there's a million ways of writing music for them. But I will try to talk about my experience writing for Chants of Sennaar specifically, and maybe a bit more broadly about puzzle games or like the little corner of them that I personally know. Um, I try to keep this talk as spoiler free as possible, but be aware that there will be mild spoilers. So if you haven't finished the game, go do that now. Um, so yeah, I wanted to talk to you about how we um, started working together with Rundisk, the developer, and how we kind of designed the very straightforward music system for this game, and how we worked around the very traditional constraints of Thinky puzzle games, because I guess there's also more active, more interactive puzzle games than this. So before I start reading from this, maybe it's a good idea to remind everyone that Chance of Sonar is a translating puzzle game. Most of the time, players will be confronted with little glyphs, and they'll have to guess their meaning. And the mechanics are very few. You'll have the translating side with hypothesis and notebook, and then you'll have stealth, a few sequences of stealth and exploring, and that's basically the whole game is like this. So it's very slow paced, and yeah, one of the big constraints of these type of puzzle games is obviously you don't want to disturb the players while they're thinking, which is most of the time in Chance of Sonar. Um, and on the other side of this equation, we needed music that sounded ancient. Like, the if you have played this game, you will know it's set in this huge, very ancient tower where several peoples um, are residing, and we wanted to make it seem like they're here. They've been here for a long time. So the music needed to convey that, at least at first, and then it also needed to sound traditional, or I want to say pull different influences from musical traditions from all over the world potentially, um, which means it had to be um, rhythmically and melodically pretty rich, as traditional music tends to be. It usually has a social role in society, and it often accompanies dances. So it can happen that traditional music will be drony, atmospheric, but most of the time it's um, highly rhythmic and heavily thematic music, which means a lot of melody. So how do you reconcile the need to, let the player think, and also the need to be melodic and develop themes and have, some kind of engaging rhythm, even if it's not highly energetic, very punchy. So that were the I think that was the first obstacle I had when confronted with this. And there are several ways that we dealt with this issue. So mostly it was down to two things I say are very important to look after for developers, if there are some among you who develop puzzle games or any kind of games and want to communicate with musicians sometimes, or anyone really, is scoping and documentation. And I'll show you some example of documents that I had to work with, or I got to work with. Um, so scoping means whenever you have an idea, you have to decide if it's worth the effort, and if it's not, you have to be able to cut the idea, even if it's the coolest idea ever. And when we talk about music, it's also deciding where music should be and where it shouldn't be. So one of the ways to just let players think is obviously silence. So that's something that we considered when building our music system. There were literally just blank spaces. Like when you have a looping track of music when the player is exploring, and if nothing major happens, if no major narrative events happen, the music would loop a certain number of time before stopping, and then you would have X minutes of silence, like 10 minutes of silence or something. And this kind of helped the hearing fatigue that you can get from uh, staying in the same area for a long time, maybe thinking about what you read or what you've seen, and the music keeps looping over and over. So we wanted to avoid that, because there's nothing more vexing than a player having to go into the menu and set the volume of the music to zero. Um, and one of the ways we also tried to divide our efforts is through scoping and documentation, try to see where the density of puzzles was the highest. So maybe it's a pretty enclosed area where there are a lot of symbols um, to decipher, and a lot of activities, a lot of more traditional puzzles. You need to get objects, you need to sneak in past guards and everything. If there is an area like that, the music needs to kind of resort to maybe not being such a big melodic development, and maybe we'll have textures, maybe we'll have drony atmospheric stuff, um, and maybe just a little twinkle of rhythmic elements. But whenever the game opened, around level 3, for example, there's this huge area where you can go anywhere you like, and there are a lot of stuff to do, and there are a lot of new words to discover. But the area is so large that you can spend a lot of time just exploring it, and maybe not solving puzzles or having to think so in such a focused manner. So then the music can develop a bit longer, and that's what gave you the track that ended up being named Gardens of Plenty on the soundtrack album. That's 7 minutes long, and I don't think this one loops at all. I think, if I remember correctly, it just plays once, and if you haven't done anything major, it will um, die out naturally, and then you'll have 10 minutes of silence. Another way of just dealing with this, leaving audio space for the players, would be to just decrease volume when they're in a menu, or where when they're in the notebook. So in Chants of Sennaar, you have this notebook where you have to kind of slide symbols and make them correspond to drawings your character is has made in his notebook. And so whenever you spend time in this, the music will automatically decrease in volume, just because we know that's where you'll need all of your brain power. So, it's a combination of musical and technical means. And this was all kind of a group discussion And that's what we call music design, which is sometimes done by the composer himself, but in in small teams we all kind of do several things at once. And obviously, like in any video game, the composition is influenced by a reflection on gameplay mechanics. But one of the things that I immediately thought when seeing this game and playing the first early build was interactivity is probably not the end goal here in terms of music, because there's not a lot of action going on. You're not gonna push a lot of buttons. You don't have QTEs. You don't have um, or you don't have action scenes, or maybe one. So maybe it could just be a little bit more linear than in other games. Just again, for the sake of scoping, like, do we need to build a very complex interactive system for the music, or can we do without? And we decided to go with a simpler system. And who knows, like, someone else might have had great success with highly interactive music in Chants of Sennaar. But if it was a game like Cocoon or some other puzzle games that are a bit more active for the players, maybe uh, it would have been um, more desirable. So I wanted to show you how the documentation that I worked with was structured. Rundisk gave me a lot when I came in, because I basically joined the team halfway through development. So the game was 50% done. And I had an early build to play. I had a lot of visual assets, and I had a huge document that you can see a highly redacted excerpt here. So basically, what they did is they had a huge list of all the different possible interactions in game, all the different events, all the different puzzles, all the different objects, all the observations you can make, all the symbols and the languages, obviously. Um, and they took this huge database and made this table with what happens, what music track should play, and what this track should feel like, or like a short description. And as you can see here, it's all in French, but you will get the gist pretty quickly. So the first column is about, like, how this track will be triggered, how this music track will triggered. If it's a special event, depending on context, if it's just an exploration loop, and so on. The second column is called déclencheur, and it means, like, what it's going to trigger the track. So what exactly happens? Like, what is the event, or what is the area that you're walking in? Third column is the name, and the last column is the most interesting, and it describes with emotional vocabulary and as uh, s- as simply as possible what the music should be like. So that's a good way to communicate with a composer, a musician, is to use this emotional vocabulary instead of maybe musical words, because then I can do my job and just translate this into music that hopefully fits in the game. Um, so you can see it's a pretty long list of things. You can see on the bottom all the different tabs are just every music track in the game was already conceived before they called me. Like, they knew how many tracks they needed, approximately how long they should be, and so on. So that's incredibly comfortable for me to just join the team, and all this groundwork is laid out. Obviously, we discussed things and we modified this document heavily. I think we had like 8 or 9 versions by the end. Sorry about my voice. I've had a cold for the past few days. Um, Now, this page is interesting because of the last column. So we still had a few parameters to think about despite the simplicity of our music system, like how many variations, how many repetitions of the same loop. Um, does is the loop infinite or not, and um, does it come back if the player leaves the area where the music plays? Usually, music plays in a certain area, unless specified. If the player leaves the area and comes back immediately, what happens musically? Does the track just go on from the same bar? Does it start at bar zero again? Does it not start at all? And all these things were also laid out and refined and tweaked until we were satisfied. Obviously, there's no way to predict what the player's going to do, so some of them might have uh, heard very weird things, but we haven't had any complaints. So it's I think we struck a nice balance between silence in music and the leaving space for the players to think. So I wanted to remind you of the aesthetic of the first level. So this is it right here with the symbols and everything. Lots of yellow and red and a bit of blue. Just because this is the notebook, I wanted to deep dive into the second level, which is interesting to talk about regarding music. And I haven't talked about this in other conferences, so that was the nice occasion to do so. And here we are. So a very big aesthetic shock with the color scheme switching entirely, the architecture very different, mood. You can even see the character here sneaking in. So what happens in lots of video games is obviously you have to tailor your work to gameplay mechanics. Um, Oftentimes we think about story, narrative, and emotional language to help us write music, but in video games, it's also probably even more important sometimes to understand the mechanics and what it implies for the players. And so at this point, when you arrive in the second level, there's everything changes. Like there's a combination of camera work, of color scheme changing, of the architecture suddenly being towering over you. There's a huge, a long moment of silence. We have to walk up flights of stairs, and the camera just goes further and further away, and you can see this tower is a lot bigger than you expected. You feel even more alone than you did, and even more lost. And then you arrive in front of this huge door guarded by soldiers, and the music has been absent for this whole sequence, and it suddenly starts, and it goes like this. Nasty stuff. And that's one of the only moments you'll hear brass in this score. So everything comes together to create this moment where you've been, talking to people, translating one, looking at wonderful panoramas, and then you come up here and it's desolate and it's very, very freaky. And the first contact with the second people is this: if you go up to them, they'll arrest you and you'll have to start the screen again. So that's one of the moments where gameplay and aesthetic and music and sound design, everything has to combine and literally just do a 180 to create this particular moment. And the introduction to the stealth mechanic was done in the first level with a like pretty light encounter with a child character, but here is the real thing. So you'll have to switch from a translator into a thief or something for a bit, and obviously the music's going to be unsettling in this area. But the thing that's so interesting about this level to me is when we encounter these peoples and um, we can't really talk to them, we can't really approach them. They appear very brutish, very authoritarian. They all walk like this, in a group. Um, they're very martial. Um, so your first impression is just like, okay, these people are not nice, and they seem immediately just defined by these traits. And the contrast is not only in their architecture and their behavior, it's also in what appears to be their culture. When we met the first people, the that we call the devotees, so highly spiritual people in the first level of the tower, they had art, they had music, they had pottery, they remember their history. um None of this here. We don't see anything that resembles these elements at first. So the first minutes exploring this level is just, okay, this is very sad people, very sad society, very sad life. But then as you progress and as you get some equipment to kind of look like them, and you can more or less go about your business, you'll hear the music get a bit softer, a bit gentler, because, and it'll be the same for all the peoples in the tower, your first impression is not really the good one. Despite these guys being very authoritative, very martial, they also have their own culture, their own worldview, their own way of um, like they believe in something. And you'll go outside the tower for the first time and you'll see an observatory in this area. So they're looking at the stars. So they're not as brutish as you first thought. And this is one of the cases where the music, even before you make all these discoveries, the music can already kind of tell you this, even if it's pretty abstract and pretty unconscious. Like you won't say, "Oh, the music is this, so these guys are nice." No, but at least uh, from my perspective, it's important to always make it so that the music knows more than the player, and it also knows more in advance. It knows everything if it's extra diegetic, which is the case here. So the the subtlety of non-infiltration music in this second level is kind of a little wink towards player to tell him, maybe progress a little bit more, try to understand these people. Maybe they're not as bad as you thought. Like they're bad, but maybe not that much. So yeah, I've already said that. So what I wanted to talk about next is all the all the things that you can do in this level are um, also linked to the lore. Like all the puzzles, and pretty much in all the game, all the puzzles are linked to the narrative and are linked to these people's culture, and it's kind of the uh, main objective to kind of get to know them all. So every puzzle has a reason to be there in the lore. Like these people didn't build like weird contraption out of nothing just because you need a puzzle here in the game. They built engines, they build doors this way, they build their tools this way because they have a certain way of seeing things, a certain belief system, or because they need uh, xyz objects, they like xyz. If you remember the fourth level, the scientists have these machines that help them with calculus. They have this alchemy lab. They know math, so they're gonna scribble on the walls or on the blackboard. It's more like um, so every almost every puzzle has a role to play, not only mechanically but also narratively. And I think the the music kind of works in its own very abstract plane, kind of in the same way. It has to say something that you might not know yet, but you're gonna know in the future if you learn enough of their language and their culture. So that was very interesting to do. I want to play for you some of the music you can hear in the second level, and I hope this works. If no words come from Joseph, I'm gonna assume you can hear this. So, very stark contrast between this and what you've heard previously, like the violent outburst of brass. Let me see if I have this. This is the, in comparison, the music that plays during stealth sequences. Lovely bass clarinet and cello. Um, one last one. This is when you see the observatory. Yeah, I could listen to this all day. Sylvain Millepied, our flute player. Amazing. I wanted to also give a shout out to Roman Capzo, who is the sound designer of the team and let's say my main companion, um, working on this music system. And then obviously, um, as I told you, here is Sylvain, the little man behind the desk. If you're lucky, like I was, and you have a budget and you have some time, you can go to a professional studio and live record instruments. You can see Isabelle Debat here on oboe, principal English horn of the Bordeaux Symphonic Orchestra, National Orchestra, sorry, and our mixing engineer here. So I don't think I need to tell you a lot more about the how the live recording went. But if you do want to know, and if you have any questions, I think we have ample time to answer them. I haven't seen your question on the chat, but
Absolutely, there are some questions, and we can absolutely
nice.
get to them. Thank you so much for
Shoot.
that talk. Actually, I had a quick one
Yeah.
first, based on that, because you showed that photo of you working with live musicians.
Hmm.
Had you done that before, or is this the first time working with live
No.
musicians? And what are the challenges you've had when working with live musicians?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of prep work going into it, and unless you're a superhuman, you can't really do it alone.
Hmm.
Like, especially um, being um, kind of a beginner at this point and not having done this before, it's pretty difficult unless you know the right people. It's not as easy. But I met with Stefan, who's not in the picture, but is the owner of the studio, composer in his own right. And from there, he presented me with a few people like engineers and musicians, and I got to yeah, record in his place. Um, the I think because we had so Rundisk contacted me in March 2022, and the game released in September 23.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that we had like a year and a half, right? We had to sign the contracts, we had to negotiate, we had to write the music, we had to validate everything and build the music system to know exactly um, that the files that we will deliver after the studio sessions would be directly implementable in the game. So that's a long haul. I got 6 months of writing, and then another 6 months was all of this recording, mixing, mastering, and then a whole lot of negotiations again about, do we want a soundtrack album and can we pay for it? Who is going to pay for it? Do we want physical media? Do we want vinyl? And we
Hmm.
did want vinyl, and we could. How and where do you do the mastering sessions for these? Because it's a different mastering session. And all of this has to take place in a pretty narrow window.
Hmm.
We had 3 days of recording and then 2 weeks for mixing mastering, which is not impossible, but kind of like it's a strong pace considering we had 82 minutes of music with 6 musicians to record, and they some of them like Sylvain, you can see Isabelle had two oboe and English horn to record. Sorry,
Hmm.
two instruments to record, but Sylvain had four because he played all the flutes in the orchestra, and then yeah, so you had to consider all this logistics, very
Sounds
basic,
complicated.
mundane stuff. Uh, what are you going to feed them if they come for the whole day and
Right.
record, and in what condition, um, what's their transportation, do you have to pay for it,
Mhm.
what is their salary, who pays the salary, and in what form. And in France it's a bit more complicated maybe than in other places, but it's due to the way that we want our musicians to have a secure structure
Mhm.
for their life of intermittent working.
Mhm.
So it's a good thing, but it's also, you have to know all this stuff. And I did know some of it because I've been working and playing on stage for more than 2 decades now.
Mhm.
But some of it is clearly new to me, surrounding like music law, pertaining to how, like, who is the owner of the masters, and who is the producer, and who pays for everything. And it's very important to know who pays for this because it
Mhm.
determines where the rights go. And it's obviously, we sign contracts to determine these things, but
Mhm.
French law also determines quite a bit, and is kind of, very protective of musicians and composers,
Mhm.
which again is a good thing. But you have to navigate this,
Sure.
and it's not it's not easy. So yeah, that are some of the obstacles, some of the issues. But it was lovely. I, I
Great.
I would do this my whole life. Like, these recording sessions are always, you're in soldier mode, but it's worth it.
Right. I wanted to follow up a question there. Maybe just a very brief one.
Yeah.
It's my own question, so sorry, folks. I'll get to the questions from the chat.
Okay.
So, which is just so presumably the musicians receive their sheet music in advance, and do they get time to practice and prepare, or are they just
Yes.
doing it live on the day, just like sight reading?
It's a bit of both.
It's a bit
I
of both.
mean, we sent them sheets in advance,
Mhm.
but some of them, we were very lucky to get some musicians that are like incredible
Mhm.
session musicians on, world level. They worked with Hans Zimmer and team and stuff on some movies, and
Mhm.
you're like, I won't have time to look at your music, so you can send it to me, but I want to read it. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just like they come
But
in the studio, they take one look at your sheet music, and they know what you want.
does it make you panic when they say that, or do you just trust them?
I mean, I with this, let me say these people are better musicians than I am.
Mm.
That's out of the question. They are used. Some of them are used to film music sessions.
Yeah.
Others are, principal soloists
Mhm.
in orchestras. So you're like, if I don't trust them, like, who can I trust? And they come into your studio, they look at your sheet music again, they know what you want,
Mhm.
and they don't even need to play it. They just instinctively know what to do. And if
Mhm.
they don't, they will ask you,
Mhm.
and they will say, like, bar 69, do you want this or that?
Mhm.
And it's it's a immense comfort, and it goes very fast because they can just do one take, one take, one take, one take.
Mhm.
And it's like black magic at this level.
Yeah.
The level of sight reading these people have, it's their entire, it's
Mhm.
their job. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's mind blowing when you see it.
they've been training for decades, and it shows. Like,
Mhm.
you just cannot beat regular daily training
Mhm.
with this stuff.
Mhm.
And yeah, they have this expressiveness and sensitivity that you're looking for when going live musicians, especially in a score in a game like Chants of Sennaar, where
Mhm.
we had a lot of solo parts and we needed this intimate, expressive very human
Mhm.
performance, and they gave it to us lovingly.
So you did also use some like synthesized instruments, right? Or at least samples.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the score is samples.
Right.
Like we couldn't have uh, paid for
It's more
all
of
the instruments
the
that you hear.
like the melodies that stand out on top of the music. Those
Yeah.
are the yeah.
Yeah. The solo parts are mostly live instruments.
Great.
So I do have an anecdote about that, but maybe you have other
I
questions
should probably get to the other
first.
questions because I've been a bit greedy. Okay, so
Hijacking me like that. How dare
so
you?
Waiko asked, which is most important when composing for a desired mood, the music or the instruments? And I guess by the music they mean the
Mm,
chords and the melody. Yeah.
that's a very interesting question. I don't know. I mean, it's a bit of both,
Yeah.
I guess. Like very unhelpful answer, but I usually go to an instrument when I start composing because I don't start with a blank sheet, and I don't like to start with the DAW unless it's just synth, for
Mhm.
example.
Yeah.
Or but if I can play an instrument that sounds kind of like what I imagine, if it's a plucked string instrument, I'll try to uh, do something on the guitar. And if it's a flute, I have flutes. I can uh, just very badly try to perform something,
Mhm.
and it helps. So the instrument kind of comes to life in my head ahead of time of music being written.
Mhm.
But other times it's just I have it in my mind, and it doesn't really matter what instrument ends up playing it, and you just lay it on the piano, which is the easiest for
Mhm.
harmonic writing for me. At least it's just going to the piano, and then after I enable for a few hours, just write it down and then decide the instrumentation. But
Mhm.
when you come in halfway through development of a game, the developers have a very strong artistic vision, a very strong identity visually, and that can also help you determine what instruments. Like for example, the reason why there isn't almost isn't any brass in this score isn't only because I use them like most, a trailer composer would, like blasting them. They can do very sensitive stuff. They can do very expressive, very quiet stuff as well. I could
Mhm.
have done that, but they're not a very ancient instrument. Like not in their modern form. Like they could play harmonic series and stuff in ancient times, but that was kind of it.
Mhm.
And so when Randisk came to me and said, "We need something that evokes ancient times," and I was like, on Earth, on our reality, on our timeline, this kind of means if you want brass, you're going to have very limited scales. You're going to have sounds that are maybe a little bit too rough.
Mhm.
Um, and that was my thinking. And but that doesn't really mean anything. Like you could have used brass if you wanted, and no one would have complained about, "Oh, this is not realistic." It's just me in my head being, you have to take arbitrary decisions.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just constraints mean more freedom. So you just build your own and say, okay, this first people in the tower, they're the devotees, they're spiritual, they like prayer, they like quiet. They also have an artistic life, and they are ancient, so they're
Mhm.
gonna play lots of string instruments,
Mhm.
very few percussions, and maybe a few wind instruments like flutes, wooden flutes, and stuff that developed in kind of every corner of the world. Like every society has flutes, wooden
Mhm.
flutes, or percussions. Maybe not
Right.
string instruments, but I think they did. And
That
anyway, that was the reasoning. I hope I answered the question.
was a great answer, and that's just reminded me. In the first area of the game, there is in fact a shop that sells instruments, if I remember
Yep.
correctly. I wonder if
Yeah,
do
yeah.
the instruments in the shop match up with the instruments you've used for the music, at least roughly.
There is actually the instruments are, if I remember correctly, like resemble ouds and mandolins and bouzouki and like guitar types
Yeah.
instruments. And there's also a lone lute player in
Right.
this level,
Oh yes, there is. Yes. Yeah.
or a lyre player. This is the lyre player,
Mhm.
and then the lute player is in the third level, I think.
Mhm.
So we had already thought about these animated characters playing string instruments. So that also kind of helped me.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, they're playing strings quite literally in the game. So
That's great. That's
yeah.
that's helpful.
Mhm.
So another question here, although I need to remember who asked this next question. Here we go. So Soul Melee in the chat asked, "What's your favorite instrument in the soundtrack?"
I want to say cello
Cello.
or oboe. I can't decide.
And
They
does that match
both
up with your favorite instrument anyway, or
um not really. I mean, cello is high up on the list, and oboe
mhm,
too, obviously.
yeah.
I picked them because I wanted them to be at the forefront and to have a lot of solo parts.
Hmm.
Flutes also have solo parts, but they're my favorite in the score. No, my favorite instrument in real life, apart from drums, which I started with, would be the Bulgarian kaval, which is a flute-like
Hmm.
instrument that has a pretty strange embouchure.
Hmm.
If I can show you this is a Romanian flute. I don't know if you'll see
We
anything,
can
but it
see it.
has.
Yeah.
This is the hole you are supposed to blow in, and this is gonna go harmonic series too. I'm not just. I'm. My hand isn't doing anything.
Right.
I'm.
Yeah. Sure.
And this is not what the Bulgarian caval has. It has nothing. It is. It's like this, and you're supposed to, break the airflow on the edge of the
Hmm.
hole, which I wouldn't be able to do if my life depended on it. Um, and there are variations of this, like all traditional instruments. It exists in various uh, forms in different cultures. I think the Persian ney is kind of the same principle, at least as the sound production goes. And then if you take the Bulgarian one, it has this very airy sound, very breathy
Hmm.
sound. Is it the right word?
Yeah.
And I just love it to bits. It gives me goosebumps. You can do also a very breathy sound with this, because uh, I don't know the name of this in English, but this part,
Hmm.
the lateral part, you can it's actually directed towards you, so you can put your lips on it to obstruct it a little bit, and instead of going like this, you can go. This is the sound that I love, but I'm very bad at playing even this one, so I wouldn't try playing the
Did you
Kaval.
manage to get these instruments into the soundtrack for Chants of Sennaar, or are you saving that for a future game, maybe?
No, they went into mockups.
Okay.
This specific flute went into the cemetery music in the first level.
Mhm.
So that's how I know that it is going to be playable
Mhm.
a lot better by a real flutist.
Mhm.
Is just trying to play it myself, even though it doesn't sound as good.
Mhm.
But I'm not performing on stage or anything, so I just do 1,000 takes, and
Sure.
that's how the mock-ups get done.
Mhm.
Obviously, I have instruments which I know how to play a bit better,
So the
but
mock-ups are
yeah.
similar to a demo recording
Oh
that
yeah,
a
sorry. The
musician.
yeah,
Yeah.
mock-ups is a demo,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
Okay.
you would do virtual instruments and recordings done in your studio.
Mhm.
Maybe not perfectly, but it's a way to get out music quickly
Mhm.
and to validate musical ideas
Mhm.
rather than sound quality. Of course, it has to be a certain quality, but it helps iterate with developers and get the music in their game faster to tell you, oh, this is what we wanted, but maybe do this differently, maybe it's too long, maybe blah 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 blah. So it's just a demo that
Yeah,
you can produce quickly to a certain standard, obviously, but it
and then
doesn't
get some
have to be
feedback.
perfect. It's a working tool.
Sure, absolutely. So, okay, I want to try and get to one more question since we're
Hmm.
going to a break in just a moment. So, Ampersand in the chat asked, were there any tracks that started off very different than they ended up?
Yes.
Hmm.
The one with, if you remember the scene in the boat on the third level.
Okay.
I don't think I have images of
Aren't
that,
there a
but
couple of boats? There's like one right at the beginning, and then later on you have to like bring some tools into a room,
I
and then there's another boat.
yeah, no, the one that is at the very beginning of the
Yep.
third level.
Yep.
Like you exit the second level through an elevator,
Hmm.
and then you have this huge lake to cross, and
Yeah.
there's this boat that's tied to a cable.
Sure. Yeah.
And the first track that I made actually had piano in it, and we ended up scrapping it entirely. It's actually one of the only tracks that got rejected. I think out of 40 tracks,
Hmm.
like 3 were kind of, this is not what we want, which is a nice ratio. But
Yeah.
again, when you have such documents at your disposal, it's very hard to miss the target.
Hmm.
Like right now, I'm working with them on another project, and it's very early, and so it's a lot more experimentation is involved.
Hmm.
But it's also very cool.
You heard it.
Now
You heard it here,
the
folks.
yeah, the Chants of Sennaar was very particular because I arrived kind of late and I had a lot more elements to work with. But
Mhm.
yeah, this track started out very differently. Um, and then it ended up being uh, violin and flutes, I want to say.
Was it a complete rewrite or was it
Yeah,
just a re-instrumentation? Complete
yeah,
rewrite. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Great. I think that's all we have time for. We're going to go for a half an hour break now. So if there are any more questions, I can't remember, Thomas, if I shared the Discord with you,
Oh,
but
I should have the link in the email. Yeah.
great. So we have a thread in the ThinkyCon Talks channel in our Discord, which is for this talk. So if anybody has any further questions, they can ask them there. I'll tag you in that thread so you know how to find it.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, thanks everyone. We're going to go to a 30-minute break, and thank you
Thank
once
you.
again to Thomas.
Bye bye.